You don't fail the government. They don't let you back. If you don't have a plan, get one. So they're spending their time and money, and they're not actually understanding what compliance is. As people use AI to write their proposals, but it can be absolutely meaningless when it comes down to it.
All right, my friend. So for everybody watching at home, can you introduce yourself a little bit of like what you do, what's your expertise, and kind of how you help SAS GPS and our clients?
My name is Sarah Pagona, and I'm the Director of Business Development for SAS GPS. I've been working for SAS GPS for 3 years, and I've been working in the government contract space for 7. I lead the team that has won over $45 billion in government wins for the company. We have written over 3,500 more at this point proposals. We work over 100 projects annually. Sometimes I feel like we're working 100 projects a month. We've worked with almost every single federal agency, upwards of 30. We also do state, local, municipal, and private. So we write a lot of solicitations, but we are experts in the federal contracting space. And really our goal is to help our clients win. 100% of the time. There's no other reason for us to be here.
So Sarah, what I want to do with you right now is I just want to do a quick Q&A of some questions that people may have about government contracting, how to win, what not to do, some pitfalls and all that fun stuff that, that involves working with the government. Yeah?
Okay, yep. This is what I do every day.
Awesome. All right. So obviously the traditional stuff, right? Don't bid for an RFP that you are not compliant with. Don't bid for an RFP that you obviously don't work in that state, right? Those are like the overall basic things, right? But going a little bit more in depth into what we do, right? Besides compliance, right? What are some key indicators that an RFP is truly a good opportunity and not somebody that you're going to waste your time with and your resources?
So when we're looking, the first thing you should always do is look at your RFP first for compliance. And I know you said obviously some of these things are very clear, right? But the number one thing that I see people make pitfalls on is that they are not actually compliant. So they're spending their time and money, and they're not actually understanding what compliance is, right? So compliance is not just, am I registered in the state? Did I register in SAMS, right? Compliance is, can you meet the requirements that the RFP has put out? And some of those are easy to check, right? Are you a small business? Do you have the right set aside, right? Others of those are a little bit harder. The number one thing that I see people get hung up on is past performance. Working with the government, especially the federal government, is sometimes a catch-22 because they expect you to have done business with the federal government of the similar size and scope. A lot of times they'll want you to show as many as 3, 5, 7 projects that you have done to be able to, be eligible to do this project.
Right.
If you are not perfect on that past performance, maybe you can still look at it, right? But you are decreasing your probability of win all the time. But if you are really far off on that past performance, that's the number one thing that I think I see people make the mistake on, is that they're like, I can do this. I've done this in my personal life. I've worked in this industry forever. I know how to do this, but my company hasn't shown that they know how to do this. And the government doesn't always care. Sometimes you can find the right solicitation, but they don't always care what you have personally done. They want to see what your company has done. They want to feel secure that your company can deliver. Other things, make sure it matches your capabilities in a strong way. And then what are your strategic goals, right? So does this opportunity meet your goal, or are you just throwing spaghetti at the wall, as we say, right? And seeing if something sticks.
That makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
That's
great. That's great.
Hold on. You should also think about your time and your resources, because if you are a very small company and you have maybe 3 people and you're telling them that you can do a job that takes 20 people, and if you win this, you need to find 20 people in 2 weeks, you're going to be, pressed. That's not a great idea. Also, if you just simply don't have the financial resources to put the money down to get the job done, the government isn't pre-funding you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that one.
Sense.
And then,
100%. And let me ask a follow-up question, because you mentioned something that was really interesting, right? So one of the questions that we traditionally get is hey, if I haven't won anything, right? I have the resources, I can pay you guys for the service, right? But I haven't won a contract, right? What would you recommend that person do?
Well, that is going to be on a solicitation by solicitation basis. The first thing I'm going to do is say, hey, let's look at that solicitation and let's read that past performance section and let's do a little bit of research, right? Is it like, how have they written the requirements for past performance? Are they saying that it is mandatory that you turn in your PPQs for 3 projects and you don't have 3 PPQs, right? Right. But if they're saying like, give us a letter of recommendation from the 3 performances that projects that you've done, and some of those can be from the private industry, well, then maybe you're good to go. So like really look at that. That is the number one thing I tell people to look at, right? And then do your research. Is there an incumbent? Does that incumbent seem like they're doing a really good job and you're going to be like squeaking by on past performance? Like you're like, I'm kind of fudging this, and then you've already got somebody in place that looks like they're doing a really good job. Maybe this isn't the one for you.
Yeah,
right?
And that leads to like the second question, right? Is like, how can you determine if a RFP is wired for a competitor, or is there still a way to win that RFP?
So the best answer is that that's hard. It's going to take research. So you can look at the RFP and try to guess, right? Like, is there a really quick turnaround that has the same set aside already as your incumbent and everything, right? If that turnaround time's like a week, the only person who can probably get that response done appropriately is somebody who's already in there, right? Yeah. Is there overly tailored criteria where you're like, why in the world would they be asking for that? There's only like one company in the world that has that. It's probably written for your incumbent.
Sure.
There's other things that you can look at that are a little bit softer that you kind of have to take in like more qualitatively. Like, did they do market research on this, right? Did they put out an RFI? Did they put out a sources sought? Do you see any like behind the scenes things where they are actually interested in what other people are doing? Sure. And then you just read that RFP really, really closely. Once you've recognized that you could be a contender, now you're asking, is there somebody else who's going to be that much better than me that I don't know if I'm a contender? Then you're really going to have to look at those and again, do as much research as you can. Find those predecessor contracts and see what they look like.
Yeah, no, for sure. 100%. No, I think that's great advice. Yeah. I mean, kind of the overarching message here is research, right? Research the RFP, right?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes researching the RFP is complicated. If you are not subscribed to all the different software services and you're not used to doing that, and that's one of the things that we do for most of our clients here at SAS GPS is we actually perform that research for you.
Yeah, no, we're actually, Sarah's one of the best.
I do that research all day.
Not that you do, my friend. It's so complex. It's a lot. I'm just going to say it's a lot. All right, Sarah. So moving on in the more kind of getting an understanding for what are some red flags to look for in an RFP? What would you say are some of the red flags that could be a risk for either cost or just being able to actually execute the RFP?
I tell people first and foremost, look at the evaluation criteria. Understand the evaluation criteria, right? A lot of the government proposals are lowest price technically acceptable, right? And if they are lowest price technically acceptable, you will see that in the evaluation criteria, right? But no, if your evaluation criteria is subjective, if something is missing, if the criteria doesn't necessarily match the scope very well, or if the scope is really ambiguous, there's a time on all of these for questions and answers, right? Sure. And that would be the thing that I would say is if you are looking at something and you think that you see red flags, like this could be risk, or this could have some hidden obligations, or this is unclear, ask questions. If you are coming in late on that RFP where you have already missed the questions, read carefully through the Q&A because probably somebody else has already asked those questions. And then, then that's all you got. I would say the best practice is make sure that you get ahead of these enough where you are getting in before the questions so that any of those red flags can be cleared up by the contracting officer. And if they choose not to, that's an even bigger red flag.
Yeah, for sure.
And 100%. Sometimes they do. They don't have to answer all your questions.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's the government. All right. So that's great. I think that's going to help a lot of people. I'll just kind of get a sense of like, maybe take a step back and reevaluate, like, should I actually go spend my resources on this, right?
Hmm.
Um, the other question that we get asked a lot, and you probably get asked this a lot on calls, right? Is like, how do you actually interpret like the government's real priorities when it comes to like the RFP that's not like explicitly said in the actual documentation, right? So how do you go
Well,
about trying to
and a
figure
lot
that
of
out?
times they're not going to tell you what their pain points are. Like that's not the goal of that RFP document, right? But you get to play kind of detective in that RFP document, like especially if you can get if there's a predecessor contract and you can get that predecessor RFP, then you can see like how have they changed it, right? And if
Right.
they've changed it, good indicator that that's a pain point for them, right? Like if they've suddenly put in a couple of new reports, then you can tell you that those reports, right, they're indicating that they didn't get something that they wanted in that last contract. But I think looking at reporting is a good place to kind of interpret like what they're looking for. Um, review. Look at those market research. Did they
Right.
send out marketing research documents? Did they put out RFIs? What were they asking for in that, right? Because those are the things that they're looking for. And, again, that evaluation criteria. So if they put a lot of weight on past performance, they probably are a little concerned that the people who came in last time didn't have the chops to do it, and they're really looking for that, right? Like,
Right.
so some of the evaluation criteria I can tell you. I don't know, some of it's just, I like to have conversations with people. I think that helps. Like, because then I can say like, oh, I saw this thing. And somebody would be like, oh no, I know why they did that. I've seen that before. Or, kind of having a team. It's a lot easier if you have people but I'm an extrovert. So I like to balance things off people.
Right. No, absolutely. No, and I think that kind of leads into what like the follow up question is like, obviously like when you analyze an RFP, there's multiple ways that you can go about doing that, right? But like funding priorities and the underlying mission of an RFP, right? Like how do you get into the head of the person who wrote the RFP on the government side so you can kind of align yourself with that?
um, the best case scenario is that you're doing RFPs all the time. You have some sort of like relationship with this particular contracting officer or that office, or even just like kind of understand the space within that agency. But the best that you can really do, because you're never gonna know, right? The best that you can do is really just read through that RFP,
Right.
pick it apart for those, and put your best foot forward. And when I say best foot forward, I mean pricing.
Yeah.
Like I always tell people, 98% of government contracts, why the government puts contracts out for bid is that they want somebody to do a really good job and they want them to do it for the absolute least amount of money possible.
All right, Sarah. So besides the fact that obviously like you meet the requirements of the RFP, you're trying to build a relationship with the officers on the government side. What are some other things that you see that that besides pricing, which you said was really important, right?
Yeah, pricing is most important.
Can make you different, and make you more attractive to the government, so that you can win that RFP.
So if you want to win an RFP, you have to respond in detail, right? You cannot give compliance statements. You cannot say, yeah, we're going to do that. Oh, we've done that before. It's great. We're totally confident we can do that, right? And we see a lot of that because they ask questions that don't seem open-ended. They seem like yes, no questions, right? They seem like you say, yes, I will do that. But what they're really asking you is, yes, I will do that. Here is exactly how we're going to do that and why we know that this is the best approach. And here's the data to prove it, right? So good plans lose and bad plans. Oh, no, wait. Oh my God, I did that backwards. Good plans win and bad plans lose. If you don't have a plan, get one. And
Yeah.
if you can't get one, get an RFP writer team who knows how to make that plan, right? And get some help. And then make sure that that plan is doable. Because what you don't want to do is put out a plan that you cannot enact, because then you're going to lose the contract. You lose the contract, you're never getting another one. You don't fail the government. They don't let you back.
Yeah. No, for sure, 100%. You can also get sued too. So there's
Yeah.
that. Um,
And yeah, understand their mission, try to connect to their mission. Like every single part of what you write is a marketing and sales document. That is also a business plan, right? That is also like, it's so many things, which is why I think that proposals are so complex,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, for sure, right? And besides those mistakes, are there any other common mistakes that, on the technical approach that, that some people do that cost them the contract?
Um, most mistakes are generic boilerplate copy and paste. You know, you got through it, but like when you read it critically, it means nothing. And that's we've been seeing that more and more too as people use AI to write their
Sure.
proposals, right? AI is great in terms of language. It writes you a beautiful sentence, right? But it doesn't know your solution. It can't know your solution. You are the only people that know your solution, or your subject matter experts,
Sure.
right? And so it's going to write you a really beautiful compliance statement, but compliance statements lose. So you can have a beautifully written proposal, but it could be absolutely meaningless when it comes down to it. I think that's a big one. Um, like failing to differentiate your company, which is again going back to being generic, right? Yep, we're going to do all these things. We've done them before, right? Okay. So has a lot of other people. What makes you special? What's your mission? What are you doing here? Being overly complex. So that's on the other side, right? People also go like from either they're super generic or they're like, okay, we could do this for you, or we could do that for you, or we could do this. Like we're so capable of doing all of these things that they don't really give like it's like the people reading it are like, so what exactly is it that you're doing? Like I don't want to pick from your menu, right? I want you
Sure.
to tell me which one you've chosen because it's the best for this solution, and I want to
Yeah.
believe that that's the best for this solution. That's how you get picked.
Nice.
Again, past performance and key personnel. Make sure that you choose the right past performance and make sure that you choose the best key personnel. And what does that mean? Like, it's not necessarily the best job you've ever done. Like, oh man, I had this one really great job that we completed, and it makes us look really good, right? But it's not in the same subject area, right? Or it's not the same size and scope, right? It doesn't show this particular solicitations like what they're asking for. Then don't use that one unless you really don't have. I mean, you have to use what you have, right? But pick the ones that are the closest to what they're looking for, and then show how you did really well on them and how you solve those problems, and make the government feel like, oh, this is a cakewalk for these people. They've basically done this before, right? And
Yeah.
look, they're going to do it for a really low price. Sweet. They figured out not just how to do it, but they've figured out how to do it really efficiently and affordably, right? And look at the key personnel they've given us, right? These are the same people that worked that project, right? Or these people have worked similar projects. So you want to pick the right personnel, and you want to make sure that when you write about those personnel that you're not just saying, here's their resume, bloop, right? But here is their resume written to a very like specific to this scope of work,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Not make it generic. Make it so that it makes sense to the
That's
project
the
and the RFP. Yeah.
number
No,
one all the
100%.
time.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I think the most like, rational answer or question here, the most rational question that, a company's going to ask, okay, we're talking about pricing, right? We have to get the pricing right. Pricing has to be okay, right? How do you analyze an RFP's pricing structure to ensure that it's profitable while still maintaining, being competitive with the bid?
Yeah, so that one's a little bit more complex, right? And here at SAS GPS, we have price to win experts that can help. That this is what they do all day. It is not what I do all day, but I can speak to it in a large way because I sit on those meetings and I help, and I have helped with strategy and things. But if you don't know how to do some of this, you probably need to get help. Like I tell people, yeah, if you need help on writing because you need to make sure you're compliant, you need to make sure you're compelling, and probably you're
Right.
not going to be good at that if that's not your job. But if you don't know how to do your pricing well, get help, right? Because you just can't win if you don't do your pricing well. Or worse than not winning, you win, but then like your company goes under because you did your pricing wrong and you can't make any money. That's like the worst. I went
Yeah.
into government contracting to have a good stable income, and I absolutely tanked myself.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So yeah, you want to break down your cost drivers. What are what are those components, like your labor categories? What do those look like in that geographic area that you're going to have to be working in? What's your overhead? What if somebody leaves? Can you replace them for the same price that you have them now? Like you kind of have to take any risk factors. Look at the contract's historical pricing, right? So if the contract's historical pricing, you have no idea how they did this job for that money, and these people are going to bid again, it's probably not the bid for you, right? But yeah, I'd say definitely historical pricing, and or pricing of ones that are similar. Like if that one doesn't have a predecessor contract, maybe you can find some that are similar, and you can see how much did these get done for, right? Are there hidden costs? Are you going to have to pay to travel? Are you going to have to pay to, get new software, things like that? Yeah. And then what do you want your margin to be?
Yeah.
What margin can you stay? How small of a margin can you stomach and still make money? I mean, we're all here to make money, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that last one is kind of like I think a gut check for a lot of people who are getting into the government space. They're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do a 60% markup," and they're like,
It's not the place for it.
"Yeah, this is
If
not
you
the
open
place
a
for it."
retail store, I'm going to tell you, yeah, you should have 100% markup, right? You should have
Yeah.
200% markup. But if you're moving it to the government, somebody's going to be able to offer it for less. It's really,
So
you're
then
not the only person bidding.
yeah, no, for sure. So is the name of the game then, Sarah, just like the quantity of contracts that a company gets, or like how does obviously the good margins are lower, right? So how does the company grow as a company in your experience that you've seen, right, with
Yeah.
government contracts, but that
Well,
doesn't tank the company.
So one of the things that's great about government contracts is that they're pretty stable. Although I know that right now in the current political environment, no government contracting feels super stable right now, but it will stabilize again because the government needs their buildings cleaned and the government needs to keep the roads up, right? Like, I mean, there's just things that the government is a stable environment. So you you can kind of rely on that for however many years that contract is. Maybe it's only 3, maybe 5 years. In that 3 to 5 years, you try to get more, right? It's not necessarily quantity, it's quality, but you can't just have one quality. Well, you
Right.
can. People
Yeah, if it's
exist
hard
on
enough.
one quality contract,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
absolutely. But what happens when that comes up for rebid and somebody's decided that they're gunning for you, right? And they figured out your game and they're going to beat you at it. And then suddenly you don't have a business. So you do want to maybe, kind of have a pipeline set up where, you have a couple of government contracts, or they're rolling in, where this one's going to expire in a year, but we just won this one. So even if we lost that one, we would have time to find another one,
Yeah.
kind of.
No, for sure. 100%. What would you say, like, if somebody is currently coming up on that horizon, right, of their contract being over, how much time should they give somebody like us, for example, right, to work with us to, evaluate how they can go ahead and work with the government to rewrite a bid that's going to favor them versus them getting, losing to a competitor that's going to price gouge them or something?
So I think if you work in government contracting, this is my personal opinion, of course, but if you work in government contracting, you should be looking towards the end of your contract from the beginning of your contract. Like, once you get your contract in and you're stable and you've got things running, you should be thinking about, like, how can I make this contract more effective, more efficient, right? How can I do, like, what better job can we do so that there is no question that when that comes up for rebid, that we want to be one of those contracts where people are reading it and being like, this feels like it's written for the incumbent, right? Like, we want the government to not let you go. And then as you start getting closer to it, I would say you probably, really it's a business development strategy, but in that last year, you need to be making sure your T's are, your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. You've started to do your legwork as your writing library in place. Like, if you won the contract, you know what that RFP was like. You know what that bid was like. You know what you had to respond to. So don't just think, so this is a thing we see a lot. Like, well, we won the last one, so it's up now. Here's our old one, right? Well, in the last 5 years, things have changed, especially if you have any technology running in your company, right? Like,
Yeah, 100%.
The technology world is not the same as it was 5 years ago, right?
Right.
The business world is not the same as it was 5 years ago, financially, economically. So you can't just take and copy and paste. You have to think, say, we know how to do this contract really well. We've been adapting as we go. And here is both the adaptations we've already put in place and the things that we want to put in place to make this contract even better. And you can't do that in the 2 weeks that you have to write it. Like, you should be starting to think about those things and implementing some of them. It looks good if you implemented it. Let's give an example. Let's say that I don't know, you have a contract for an agency and they've decided that they're investing in electric vehicles, like as, you know, as a whole agency. Like, so if you can go find those agencies' missions and what they, you know, and they put these out yearly, they tell you what they want to do, their goals and things. And then you say, hey, look, back in 2023, you guys said you wanted to, you know, electric vehicles was a part of it. We recognized how, you know, efficient and cost effective that could be for our company. And we've put 2 electric vehicles already in place and we're going to put more, you know, whatever it is. I mean, that's just a silly example, but like, if you have been paying attention to your agency's broader missions and you've been helping meet those, prove that you've done that and then show how you're going to do that more.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's what you said is super interesting, right? Is like, don't get complacent on your own contract because, again, in 5 years or 3 years, or even 1 year, like a lot can change. I mean, we've seen that with AI and technology. You know, prices of specific raw goods can go up and down quite rapidly, and it could make your pricing structure just, you know, go crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, for sure. Something to think about.
The other thing in terms of that, right, is that some of these contracts can be long. Like maybe you have a 10-year contract, right? But when you bid, you had to have 3 past performance pieces of similar size and scope in the last 5 years. And you've done nothing because you've been sitting on your laurels happy with this contract for the last 10 years. Suddenly you don't have the past performance to win your own contract back.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
That would suck. For sure.
It happens. You put yourself in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I guess the other pricing question that a lot of people ask us, right, is like fixed price contracts versus cost plus contracts, right? How do you navigate the two? Which one, you know, like what do you choose, like as a company, right? Do you choose to go for one or the other, or how does that work?
Well, fixed price contracts are obviously a little bit easier to determine your margins and like exactly what you're going to need to do. They're like clearer, if you will. They're well defined. They have predictable costs, right? So then you get to focus on things like, can we automate it? Can we be more efficient, right? Like, you know, so that you can maximize your profit and mitigate your risk. For cost plus contracts, they're more flexible. The scope can change. The amount of things that they want can change. Cost tracking, right? Costs can change, like you said, right? Like especially the price of things like if you're using metal, steel. So you kind of have to factor those in. So I think your pricing model just has to be a little bit more complex. So if you're writing a really super simple pricing model, maybe you need to stick to those fixed price contracts. And if you're able to have sort of like that predictive flexibility built in, you know, and you can understand like how your overhead is going to change and some of those things, then I mean cost plus contracts are good too. They're both good. It just you know, I think we have a lot of people that like firm fixed price contracts.
No, for sure. I mean it's an easier time for sure.
But sometimes those cost plus contracts are where you can really make money because you think like, oh, they were only going to need 10, but then they ended up needing, like when COVID hit, right? Like suddenly, like if you are the person that had the contract for all those COVID tests, like, right? Like, well, it wasn't COVID test contracts before, but you know, just testing, medical testing contracts, you know, for people who are supplying that, they went from being like, we're doing good to holy moly, we're rich.
Right.
So sometimes those indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts are nice.
Yeah, no, for sure, 100%. So would you say then, Sarah, like for a company who, let's say somebody who hasn't won something in the last 3 to 5 years, right? Go after what type of contract?
Well, if you haven't won anything in the last 3 to 5 years, you're going to have to be digging a little bit more through those solicitations to see. It's again about that past performance. And if you can't find anything and you need something, then you need to be thinking about other strategies than just straight government bidding, bid, right? You're going to need to find a teaming partner. Maybe you need to find, you know, some subcontractors who some solicitations could let you use subcontracting past performance or teaming past performance. Again, you really have to read through that past performance section and see what they're allowing you to do. Because sometimes, like if you have a partner, like, and you, like, let's say you made a joint venture, right? Like, so company A and company B came together. Now we're company C, right? Some contracts are going to say, we want to see company C's past performance, not company A or company B, right? So you got to be careful, but you want to find one where company A can show some, company B can show some. If you don't have any, hopefully company B can show all of it, and then you've come together. So how do you convince somebody to be a teaming partner with you like that? You know, that I think the trick with government contracting is once you get in, don't stop.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Getting in is the hard part. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
don't want to get out and have to come back in. That's not,
Yeah.
it's not
No,
great.
for sure. 100%. All right, Sarah. So there's a lot of people who obviously are worried about pitfalls or compliance risks when it comes to government contracting, right? So what do you think are like the biggest compliance risks when it comes to like in just RFPs that are not hidden away or that could lead to like disqualification or contract issues, in general?
So, disqualification. If you're working with us, we're not going to let you get disqualified. We've never lost one due to, not being compliant, because we're going to check your compliance. And if we don't think that you can be compliant, we're going to tell you stop work.
Yeah.
Even if that takes money out of our pocket, right? Like, because we want you to win. You should want to win, which means you should really be checking your compliance. I think that that's the biggest one, is that you've misinterpreted your eligibility requirements maybe, or you don't understand. A lot of companies come in, they just don't really understand what they're looking at. Like, if you are a small business, let's say you're looking on sam.gov and you see a set aside and it says it's an SDVOSB and you are not a service disabled veteran, you cannot bid on this contract. Right? So understanding your set asides, understanding those past performance thresholds. I don't know how much I can stress that, right? Like, go through and read about the past performance. And then if you don't qualify, stop reading and move on to a different solicitation. Like, don't be emotional. Don't be like, oh, but this one was perfect. It's in my backyard and I know how to do this. Like, you can waste your time and money writing it, but you still won't win just because you think it's perfect for you, right? Like, you have to check those requirements. And are there certifications that you need that you didn't catch? One of the ones we catch when we're just first checking compliance before we even estimate a project: security clearance. Do you have the security clearance? Is the security clearance mandatory when you get the bid, or is it mandatory once the contract starts? And if it doesn't say, you can always ask in the Q&A section. Same for a lot of the requirements or things like that. Like, do they require a bond, right? Like, can you get that bond? I always
huge
check
thing that
bonding
happens.
requirements.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because but then other things that people do: non-compliant pricing. I see a lot of non-compliant pricing. The number one reason that people lose RFPs is pricing, and non-compliant pricing is a big one. Or just non-compliance in general. Like, well, they say that they wanted 15 personnel, but I know we can do this with 12, right? You're disqualified, right? Or this is the minimum that they say that they want in terms of price. I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna give them the minimum. Why bother writing it? Because somebody is going to give them above the minimum, right?
Walk me through that last example. So what would be an example? Like, for example, for a construction bid, right? How would that look like?
Like, let's say you see that the cap, right? They say, like, we cannot spend any more than $3 million on this project. And you go, okay, well, then the project is $3 million, right? That might not be the right pricing strategy.
Right.
I would say other things is that people overlook a lot, and where having somebody on your team who is decent at reading proposals and doing word and document formatting really is page limits, formatting rules, mandatory attachments. Those things are going to lead to disqualification. And just the teeny tiny little things like, did they say that you had to have a plan for how to make, sometimes they're so little and weird. Like, the trash cans had to be metal, and darn it, we put that we were going to use plastic trash cans. You're disqualified. Yep. Right? So you have to that compliance stuff is so much minutia, and you really need to break that document down, and you need to make sure that you have met every single one of those requirements.
Yeah, no, for sure. Right. Yeah. So Sarah, we were talking about, obviously, like, how to win contracts, right? And one of the things that you mentioned a lot that, we're trying to drill in our customers and our future customers, heads, right, is compliance, requirements, right? But they're obviously, like, the people who write it on the other side are also human, right? They're not going to write perfectly written out statements that explain everything to the T, right? So what do we do in those scenarios where it's a tricky evaluation criteria? How do we read through that?
I feel like almost every RFP is tricky evaluation criteria. Like, I almost sometimes think, like, did they make this labyrinthian just so that, like, they don't have to read as many of these? No, it just is always, it is always a mess. And right. And these are hundreds of page documents. But if the evaluation criteria is unclear, like you've really read this and you've read it and you've thought about it and you've talked about it with somebody else on like your team and you've gone back and forth, or you asked an expert and we're like, dude, this is not right. The number one thing that you can do is ask questions. Get in those questions before your Q&A period is over. And then if you can't do that, right, or they don't answer your question, which is a possibility, think about like how much weight in that evaluation criteria is this particular thing, right? And like, let's say you're like, I don't know if I should do more or less because of this. Like the criteria is unclear. Should I do more or less?
Right.
Do more. The answer is do more. Put more in, right? Use some data, use some case studies, really just hit it hard. And then if they didn't really care about it, like,
right.
It's not going to hurt you. Whereas if they did really care about it and you chose to blow it off, then you made the wrong choice. Now that does become tricky when you start having to balance page counts, right? So there's going to be some, weight has to be given, like, and you're going to just, sometimes you have to make the best decision that you have from the information that you have. Yeah. Leverage any insights that you found in your research, kind of, some of it is just problem solving as much as you can.
No, 100%. All right, so we went through a lot, right? And again, this is just to showcase, like your expertise. You have a plethora of knowledge, my friend. So thank you so much for all that. Hopefully that's helpful for everybody watching the video.
You can always call me.
Yeah, we'll leave buttons all over the screen right now. So
right? You can always call me, and then we can talk about it on an individual basis, because that's what I do all day.
All right, Sarah. So now that we've gone through all that information, which we're super thankful for, and I hope the viewers watching the video are also thankful for. It's a lot of details, a lot of help, and I think you'll get some clarity on like what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. Who should work with us, right? Like who's the type of client that works with SAS GPS? How do we make them successful? And and how do we help them get to to win government contracts consistently?
Okay, so at SAS GPS we work with anybody from like basically small businesses all the way to quite large businesses across all industries and all set-asides. The biggest thing that I would say is if you're like looking at this and you think like, is this contract for me, right? And you're looking at this and you're thinking, do I need to get help, right? Remember that time is money, and money wasted is what your company probably can't really afford to do. So what does that mean? Well, you could write this RFP yourself if you're not an expert. Maybe the thing that you get to learn from the time that you put in, which your time is money, just like ours, right, is that you've learned how to write a better proposal when you do your debriefing, right? But if you want to spend that same sort of money and less of your time, where you could be spending it doing your business and continuing to make money, then I would say get an expert. So even if you don't win, what you're learning is how to make your business better, not how to make your proposal better, right? Not right. How darn it, I missed a compliance thing. So there goes 3 weeks of my work. How much was 3 weeks of my work worth, right? So if time is money, then, getting an expert help is eventually efficient. And if you can't afford to get expert help, I would ask yourself, do you have the resources to get this contract done? Don't promise that you have resources to get contracts done that you don't, because again, once you fail the federal government, they don't let you try again, very often. So
you mentioned to me something. So you mentioned to me something off the call, right? Where you're saying that like a lot of times what people will do is, especially with now ChatGPT, right? They'll be like, oh, I'm going to have, the project manager just go ahead and write this with AI and just like, get it all done in an afternoon and send this proposal out. Because I can just put I can grab the entire documentation, just put it into ChatGPT and have it do it for me, right?
Sure.
Thought.
Sure, you can. So the deal with AI is AI is not specific. You could spend an afternoon, maybe, if you were good at training your chat GPT, how to read that solicitation and how to put something together. But chat GPT or any of the AI services, unless you've really, really trained them up, right? And now you can do that, are going to miss compliance things. And what they're going to spit out, because you haven't been feeding them with all of your solutions anyway, right? What they're going to spit out is very generic statements. So like, yes, we can do this. Or they're going to speak to industry best practices, maybe that are also very generic, that are not your specific plans. And specific good plans win, and generic compliant yes statements lose. So, I mean, sure, you can get it turned in, but you're probably not going to win. I guess if you can get that done in an afternoon, it's worth a shot, but I bet you can't. Like, the other thing I would say to consider in that, right, is if you're putting your company's name on something and you're putting it out in front of these contracting officers, and these are the contracting officers in the departments that you're going to be working with long term, many years, decades, right? Don't embarrass yourself. Right. And I have seen some embarrassing proposals, like where I'm like, oh, you might want to change your company name if you're going to submit something to the next person again, because if I saw this proposal come up in front of me, I would think you're a joke. And that's not even to be mean, but like, you have to think that this is a marketing document as much as anything else. And maybe you don't win this one, but it's a marketing document for your next one as well.
Yeah,
right.
No, for sure. 100%. And you also, I mean, I think the other side to that too, like adding to that point, is that, you know, you're also going to be competing with other companies that have a full team of people, right?
Yeah. You're competing with people who are taking this seriously, who didn't decide to try to throw this together in an afternoon. Now, if, you know, it does come down to sometimes other things than just your proposal, right? Your pricing. So, you know, there are factors, and I'm not saying that I'm not going to crush anybody's dreams and tell you that miracles aren't possible, but, you know, maybe sometimes there's one where there's only one person bidding somewhere very rural with something very, very weirdly specific. But you probably would already know that because you're probably the only person in that area doing that. Sure. You know, so really, if you're serious about winning government contracts, you probably need to get at least some kind of help. At SAS GPS, we do very bespoke help as well, right? So not only do we do full turnkey proposal management and writing, where we're taking it from cradle all the way to grave, you know, and all that you're really having to do is meet with us and tell us your solutions verbally, and we're writing to them. We can, you know, we do this whole full service thing, but we also just do smaller bespoke things. Like, let's say that you are pretty decent at writing these, but you were really pressed for time, and you could help somebody help you just do some document layout and some compliance checks. Now, we don't like to do that for everybody, because we want to win. And if you are really bad at writing proposals, and then we get this thing at the end to check your compliance, and we're like, this whole proposal is not okay, right? I don't like to put my name on that, right? But if you have done them a lot of times before, like you're a company, you've won a lot, you just are overwhelmed, we can come in and we can help you with the small things, right? I don't recommend that sort of bespoke approach for newbies. Like, you know, you're coming in, this is your first couple of proposals, you're trying to build a library, right? Like, that's probably not the way to go. You need to have some upfront investment to try to get that. And then maybe later you can work from those libraries and come in with a little bit more of a bespoke approach from us. But we do customize our services as well. And everything that we give is on a firm fixed price, not to exceed estimate. So one of the things that I love about working with SAS GPS is previously I've worked with a lot of different proposal companies. I sat on the private side, you know, the side where we were hiring people to help us with our proposals. And I've worked with almost every major company in this industry. I won't name names today. But every time as the budget manager of that, right, I'm PMing these proposals, and they're saying, well, we think it's going to be, 30 hours. It's going to be $8,000, right? And we're writing, and man, we've been working so hard, but it's not done yet because these things are hard. And we've got 2 days left to go, and they say, oh, we're out of hours. Oh, it's going to be more money. And then, we can't not turn this in at this point. We're pot invested. So we're going to have to put another $3,000 into this that we didn't expect. But at SAS GPS, so I actually worked with SAS GPS, and I liked how we modeled so well that I actually came to work here. So, we say, look, unless there is a major change from the requirements that come out from the government, we're going to be able to tell you our maximum cost to you or less. So we're going to tell you if this thing is 30 hours, we're going to cap you at 30 hours, even if we spent 50 hours on your proposal, because our ROI is to win. You win, then we win, because you make money, you come back, you spend that money with us and winning the next one, and we keep going until you've gone from being a small business to a large business, and and then you're differentiating out of other businesses. That's what we want to do for you, and we understand that nickel and diming you for the $700 or something, right? Like at the end, because you were slightly over hours, is not how we make long-term loyal clients that we keep winning for, and we like to win, and we do it really well, right? And if we end up, like if we say it's 30 hours and we end up only using like 22 hours, we only charge you for the hours that we use, because that's all we really need to charge you for. So we treat our people fair. We treat everybody right. Our costs are up front, and you know exactly what you need. So the good thing about that is that, do I have the money? Do I have the time? Do I have the resources? Well, at least I can give you a solid number on what those resources are going to look like, and you can make that plan.
Yeah. No, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of people appreciate, because as you mentioned, right, some competitors of ours, they say one price, and then at the end it's like, hey, we forgot to add on a zero. Right? And that's never fun, especially if you're trying to win government contracts and you have other parts of your business that you need to run as the owner or the partner or the COO or whatever, right? Like you want to be able to just say yes and then move on with your business and be able to focus on other things, as you mentioned, right?
Yep. We live in capitalism. It's about money.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you, Sarah, for your time. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And hopefully a lot of people call us and talk to you, because we want to help them as much as we can.
Absolutely.
All right.
I'm very busy, but, but I will make time for anybody.
We'll keep you busy. Don't worry.